Hi, I'm Mary Long. I'm the founder of Herstory Network. Today I want to talk a little bit about why we need to thank a woman for these cell phones that we have. Because most people think Steve Jobs, he's so amazing, iPhones and all that, and he is. I'm not taking anything away from him. But the reason we have them is because of this woman, Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr was considered one of the most beautiful women in the world, and she was a Hollywood movie star back in the 30s and 40s. So she was from Vienna, and America was her adopted country, and she loved it here. And the World War II was raging, and she wanted to do something to help, and she was convinced that she could. So what was happening during that time between ships is the Americans were sending supplies to Europe. They'd have ships full of supplies to Europe, and the German U-boats would torpedo them. And this really bothered Hedy because the supplies weren't getting there. And especially at one point, they torpedoed a ship with 83 children on it, and that put her over the edge. So she was convinced that she could do something. So she sat and worked out this scheme to help with the communications between America and their allies that the Germans couldn't intercept. Now, she enlisted the help of George Antheil, who was a musician friend of hers. He was a pianist, and he made all these complicated pieces for the player piano that people didn't like. Like his most famous one was called Ballet Mechanique. And it was a bunch of different keys being played at the same time on this roll of piano player music sheet. But anyway, so she took her idea to George, and they worked together. And in 1942, they got a patent for frequency hopping, which they called spread spectrum technology. And this was talked about in the papers and everything, that they had invented a way for America to communicate with their allies without Germany being able to intercept it. Because what it did was it wasn't just on one frequency. So if they were sending a message and it was on this one frequency and the Germans intercepted it, they knew what was going on. That's how they would find the boats and torpedo them. But with their frequency hopping, Hedy had invented a way to spread this out, spread out these frequencies, so even if they got one, they only had a minor piece of the communication, and they couldn't get it all. So this was talked about in the newspapers, this great invention. So Hedy and George patent their invention, and they go to talk to the big brass in Washington, and pretty much get laughed out of the office, because you got a Hollywood movie star and a piano player, and what do they know? So Hedy was, of course, heartbroken. She went back to making movies, but by then she was like in her mid-30s and, ancient in Hollywood. Her looks were going. She wasn't getting hired as much. And I say her looks were going, in quotes, according to Hollywood standards. So she had some plastic surgeries. They were botched. She wasn't getting the roles anymore. And she ended up really broke and destitute. And actually, she hadn't been in the spotlight for years, and then she's in the spotlight for shoplifting, which of course you can imagine was so shameful and humiliating for her. So her life was pretty much over, and she was told, basically, your beauty is what matters, the brains doesn't matter so much. And once her beauty was gone, she thought of herself as worthless and really, really was hitting rock bottom. However, she still had her patent that belonged to her and George, and lo and behold, wireless phones are thought of. And they needed technology for wireless phone communication, and who had that technology but Hedy Lamarr. So Hedy Lamarr's invention is now used in wireless phones, GPS, military communication, Wi-Fi, all these different things, because of this woman who was told only her beauty mattered, but she used her brains to change the world. So the next time you're on your cell phone or your laptop, remember to thank a woman. Thank Hedy Lamarr.